It's time for a brand new episode of the Genuine ScLoHo Media and Marketing Podcast. My name is Scott Howard, also known as ScLoHo. This is an ongoing collection of media, marketing, and personal insights with a fresh update nearly every week since 2017. Today, a lot of personal insight. This is the audio reading of an article that you can read at my website at scotthoward.me. Altogether, I published over 1,600 articles, and this one is titled Public Broadcast Funding Cuts. Even though I'm recording this at the Federated Media Studios in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I work for WOWO, that's WOWO Radio, and this is being promoted by my employer, everything that I say or write is strictly my own thoughts and not necessarily of Federated Media or any of their affiliations and or advertisers. First of all, this is not a political article. I say that up front because if you are politically active and align with either the left or the right, you're likely having strong views on the subject of public broadcasting funding cuts. And I'll also share with you that I'm a pretty independent person when it comes to politics. For nearly a dozen years, I've worked for a conservative news talk radio station that features programming primarily from a conservative viewpoint. However, I have a deeper understanding of how media and money work, and it's not as sinister as some people think, that topic of media and money. Now, sticking to just radio for my example, each radio station out there, they have a format that the owner and operators have decided to play, and that decision is usually financially based. At least 95% of the time it is. The other 5% or less, there's someone with enough money to burn to put programming on the radio or TV or wherever they just want to hear, regardless if it makes any money. My corner of the world, based in Northeast Indiana, has a strong right-leaning political base, and so my radio station, with our conservative talk format, does very well with having a large and loyal audience. We also have a great advertising sales team that is able to work with local business owners and create advertising campaigns. That's where the money comes from to run the radio station. Now, in my past, I've also worked for music radio stations, and each music station also has a core audience that are wanting to attract, and that is supported in turn by advertising from businesses that want to invite those listeners of that radio station to become their customers. I've worked for radio stations that are not my personal favorites for listening to, but I understand the audience and businesses that want to invite that particular audience to become their customers. Funding for commercial broadcasting is pretty simple, as I've just explained. Now, there are a lot of additional things that are behind the scenes, like music license fees and broadcast license fees, along with the expenses of equipment and people, but all of those things are paid for through the sale of advertising. There is no government funding sending money to commercial broadcasting stations. It's actually the opposite, where we pay for broadcast licenses to the Federal Communications Commission. The news this year that the government was killing people by eliminating funding for public broadcasting is, well, commentary, not truth. Yes, funds are being cut. That is true. No one has died yet because of this. That is false and a bit over-the-top dramatic. Feel free to do your own research on how the federal government and state, even local governments, started giving money to fund public broadcasting back in the 1960s as an alternative and supplement to commercial broadcasting. For decades, conservatives have been talking about eliminating this public funding, saying it isn't fair, and whatever spin they want to use about biased media using tax dollars. Clearly, our government spends money on things that each of us support and agree with, and conversely, they also spend money on things we wish they did not. I'm referring to everything from the military to, well, you name it. Now, specifically talking about the cuts to public broadcasting and how will that affect us, it really depends on each station, network, and organization because some were more dependent on those government dollars than others. If you go to my website at scotthoward.me, I have links in this article, embedded in this article, for some of the quotations I'm about to share with you. For example, in Washington, D.C., News Talk WAMU at 88.5, the perennial ratings leader in Washington, D.C., isn't too worried about the impact of the Trump administration's defunding of public media. WAMU is a 64-year-old station. It estimates the rescission will equate to a loss of $1.5 million annually, which is about 4 to 5% of its operating budget, according to a news story on WAMU's website. Here in Fort Wayne, Indiana, there is this preliminary report about our local PBS TV operation. The station is set to lose more than 42% of its revenue with a combined hit from both state and federal funding cuts. That's more than $1 million, a devastating loss for a nonprofit station that operates on a $3 million budget. We also have a public radio station that is impacted. WBOI, along with the rest of NPR, has had to adjust funding cuts from multiple levels of government. Station manager Travis Pope said the Indiana legislature cut $60,000 from the station's budget across 2 years, and the U.S. Congress has slashed an additional $143,000 yearly. Pope said the lost funding represents about 10% of the total money that WBOI receives, and he expects it could have an impact on anything from staffing levels and programming to how often the trash gets picked up. Pope also said more cuts to what the Corporation for Public Broadcasting provides could be on the horizon. WBOI sold a building that they've owned in downtown Fort Wayne that at one time was going to be their new home, but costs to refurbish that building have increased, and after 10 years of owning the property, it's been sold off. Now, just a few years ago, our company, Federated Media, was a mere days away from buying a building in early 2020. And then COVID hit, and we waited due to the economic uncertainty. We did purchase a new building at the end of 2021, but with the after effects of the pandemic and with both price increases and supply shortages, here we are in 2025, just starting the permanent move-in process that we hope to have completed before the year is over. Our company reduced budgets and staff, and we reviewed our expenses to find ways to save with less income. And we did that successfully, including changing our trash pickup schedule. That success came from doing two things. Number one, reviewing and reducing operating expenses. And number two, growing revenue. That is the same thing that both public TV and radio need to do right now. I've got one more excerpt from the Travis Pope WBOI story. This is the public broadcasting station for radio in Fort Wayne. It says, other ways the WBOI generates revenue is through membership and fundraisers, and the radio station hopes to expand its efforts in those areas while also looking for new grants in response to the budget cuts. WBOI has roughly 3,000 households supporting the radio station through monthly gifts and one-time donations. Pope also encouraged those who are interested in helping WBOI to listen to the station's programming and participates in the organization's events. Public broadcasters are prohibited from selling commercials as part of their licensing from the Federal Communications Commission. But just like TV, commercial radio and TV stations, they have supporters and ways to raise monies, and if you want to support them, please do. Do you have any questions about any of the things I've said today? Do you have any questions about advertising and marketing that you don't know who to ask? You can ask me by dropping me a line. Email me, scott@wowo.com. That's scott@wowo.com.
Podcasts by Federated Media.